Okay, so what do we got? We have scouts. Alright, decent view range, decent stealth. We've got an M249. I mean, I wouldn't really want to get into a firefight, or bring these guys into a firefight. They are scouts after all. They're much more valuable just looking. And the M1117 Guardian. With... oh! Okay. I thought those were separate vehicles. Alright. Or you can have the turret. I legitimately thought these were separate vehicles. Hang on. Hang on. From the press build, because I am very confident that those were separate vehicles. Okay, I guess not. I mean, it treats them like separate vehicles here. Armored Knight, see... yeah, they are separate vehicles. They're right here. Huh. I wonder why they decided to merge them. I think I mean I think it would have been better to keep them as separate vehicles. Primarily because you can use this thing as a route security vehicle that's not necessarily in the front lines. Which is actually what this thing's intended for, I'd like to point out. Use this as a route security vehicle, and then use the Armored Knight as a reconnaissance vehicle. Menu of the Stryker RV. Which, I mean, to be fair, the Stryker RV does have its own laser designator and good view range, so you don't strictly need to have them separate, but still, wouldn't hurt. Reactive armor plus trophy. Huh. You can't airdrop the thing if you put reactive armor on there. Oh well. That's 125. Weapons package. M2. 19. Bushmaster 2. With not a whole lot of ammunition. Although again, recon vehicle. And then you have the option for Javelin, at which point the thing does become actually pretty expensive. The thing actually becomes very expensive, particularly when you compare it to something like the CEV. The CEV is like 30 points less. And it's better armored, for one. And it does okay. It doesn't quite have the same view range. And it can't laze. But so the U.S. Army did actually try to develop a reactive armor, not coating. They did try and develop reactive armor tiles for Strykers, so that's where SRAT comes. The problem was that the panels basically needed to be individually formed for each vehicle or something. It was something along those lines, and that was just deemed too much, and it wasn't worth it, for lack of a better term. So the program was dropped. The MQ-1, the famous MQ-1, which does have a laser. You can do things like that if you so desire, which again predominantly something like an anti-infiltration tool, using something like this to hunt down infiltrators. Which is where I see drones like this being particularly useful. Texas Air National Guard. Well, I mean, that is on the border. And then you have the dinky RQ-7, which is cute. And cheap. Alright, next is the infantry. And we don't have much to choose from here. We've got engineers, which again act as basically close range assault troops with M4s, some M249s, and some shotguns. Okay, well these aren't quite as assaulty. The shotguns are short ranged, yes, but everything else is normal ranged. SMAWs. Okay, that's not bad. And then you have regular troopers. Everything is pretty conventional here. AT-4CS, RS, and they also have Javelin, or a Javelin, with only 2 missiles. Huh. Okay. If I'm going to be entirely honest, I would trade in all 3 of those AT-4CSs for like 1 more Javelin and a total of 4 more or 6 more missiles. And then you have the guys with anti-air. Oh, they have an M240. Okay. They have an M240 and they have an FIM-92. Alright. So it all seems fairly well balanced. Ouch. And again, I suspect this is like the armor brigade where you're supposed to use all these, all this infantry in concert with one another. The fact that the mech engineers don't appear to be as range limited, or I say mech engineers, the fact that combat engineers don't appear to be as range limited as the other engineer units is interesting. They do have the shotguns though, which would be fairly range limiting. So, and then we have vehicles, and we have the M10, the not a tank, well, the not a light tank. I still don't understand why the army canceled this thing. Like, didn't they need it? Pretty sure they needed it. And then Hesh. You do have an Iron Fist, which honestly I like the placement of the Iron Fist. I really do. Oh, the armor values. Hang on just a second here. Does this change the Iron Fist? Because this thing has 800 heat, like 800 heat armor from the front. I love that. I love that so much. And 250 from the side. It is literally a mini tank. This thing's glorious. And then you have a weapons package with a 50mm autocannon. And, oh, okay, so they did change that up. What is this 50mm? It's okay. A little meh. Is there anybody even in that turret? I honestly cannot tell. I don't see any hatches big enough for people. I mean, there's this weird big hatch back here, but... I mean, this thing looks like it'd be pretty darn tough. And then we have a gun truck. I like the gun truck. It's got a 50 cal, a Mark 19, and a tow. Unfortunately, the tow can't, yeah. So what, 30, so you can get it down to a total of... Well, wait a second, I forgot to check the, these. You can get 2 tow launchers, which might be useful, potentially. Not sure. Although I'm kind of partial to just all the 50 cals myself. The idea would basically be to use this thing as a route security vehicle in a convoy. Like, if you think you have... The idea I had is if you think you are having... If you think you could have problems with things like infiltrators, take your supply vehicles, put them in a convoy, put a M1117 in the front, put one of these in the back, and then if they decide they want to start something, you've got the M1117 that could spot them. And then you've got this thing that can just melt them with the grenade launchers. have a Stryker ATGM. Oh wait, this thing has skins, does it not? Ah, so boring. Tow 2A, Tow 2B. Strat, trophy. That's not bad for an ATGM carrier, especially one with an active protection system. The Stryker Engineer Support Vehicle. Strat. Trophy. And then you have Mark 19 or 50 cal with the Javelin for 120 out of the gate. It's not bad. Engineering support variant. And then you have the Stryker ICV, the regular variant. With SRAT or with Trophy, that's 85. Or you can have the Dragoon with a 20mm and a coax. Or not 20mm, it's a 30mm. And a coax. Or you can have the Javelin. For the same cost as the ESV, notably. The Dragoon, honestly, though, might be the slightly better option because you've got more autocannon. And then we have the Stryker MGS, which isn't... I bumped the microphone. Did I already look through this one? I can't remember. Huh. I think I did, actually. The MGS, which isn't in U.S. Army service anymore, and wow, this thing does not have a lot of ammo. I mean, the autoloader did only contain 8 rounds, so. You can swap out to a Mark 19 if you're so inclined. Or you can do that for 125. Yes, the barrel is phasing right through that. If I'm going to be entirely honest, the Stryker MGS uses the same, if I'm not mistaken, gun as the M68E1, M68. Okay, so it's not the same gun, but they use the same ammunition. Meanwhile, the M8 and the Booker use the same gun. I just think that the M8 and the Booker should get slightly better ammunition. Like, instead of 325 to 520, it's maybe don't know, 360 to 600 or something like that. So, yeah. But that's just me. Right, I need to put that back on. And then we have the support tab. And this is where this specialization has a lot to offer. We have this thing, which is... Oh, this thing can fire on the move. It's gonna be so much fun. Yeah, it's gonna be so much fun. This thing can fire on the move. And then you have the up armored version. You know, an alternative would be, instead of the battleship, bring this thing in your convoys. It can intercept missiles. I don't know if that includes ballistic missiles or just cruise missiles, but I just love the idea of someone trying to stage an ambush on the convoy, getting lit up by an M1117, and then next thing you know, this thing just swings the gun over and just starts mowing the forest down. And it's not that expensive either. 80 or 90. Okay, well, hang on. What's the well, the PVADS is 100. PVADS is tougher. PVADS is also only 80. And the gun here might actually be slightly better because it's doing kinetic damage. Although the PVADS gun is... The PVADS gun is technically firing explosive rounds. Even if the PVADS can kind of... Although that's considered cluster. Huh. I wonder if this thing and PVADS work on two different concepts. I might have to update the PVADS. Which, you know, honestly, if they have some like updating work to do, that's fine. I'm not gonna complain. Then we have the Hammett. Or you can go with the armored transport that cuts the amount of supplies you can carry in half, but makes it slightly tougher. And then we have the palletized load system, which you can also up armor and give a machine gun. HIMARS, which should, I mean, I'm sorry, I know I said this before and I'll say it again, this really should just be in the Marine Corps tab, the Marine Corps Specialization. Cluster. ATACMS. Or, that. The Prism. the MML. The multi-mission launcher with stingers that it can't fire while it's moving. I mean, you can armor it. Or you can go with Hellfires, which still can't fire while it's moving. Or you can go with Sidewinders. Which would be great for missile defense. This thing would be interesting as a sort of mini SAM battery. Patriot Pack 3. This would also be great for missile defense. Multi-target 3. Weapons package. Missiles per target 2. Self-defense package. You can up armor it. Hang on, that's MIM 104F. That's MIM 104E Gem Plus. Well, that's right. And then this is MIM 104F MSE. Multi-target 2. Multi-target 3. Multi-target 3 missiles per target 2. Okay, so you could basically pick which one you want, and the primary deciding factor is going to be down to the missiles. Do you want either more missiles or better missiles? And even then, it's not so much more. It's just like one has slightly greater range than the other. And requires more resources to resupply. That's about it, honestly. Stryker mortar carrier. And, you know, you do get the trophy. You get guided rounds. Not sure if they need them. For a mortar carrier with an active protection system. Now, granted, I'm all for up armoring your mortar carriers, but an active protection system might be a little bit much. The same would go for over here with this thing, which has an active protection system. Like, do you really need the active protection system? Versus 40 and 20. Huh. And then you have the Stryker M Shorad for 150. That's a pretty decent cost for what you get without the armor package. It goes to 220 if you put the armor package on. Didn't I already? I don't know. Just throw the armor package on. It goes to 220. And if you want Hellfires, it goes to 240. And they're not even like super good either. Or you have the APKWS, which you can't fire on the move. You fire 4 missiles per target. Might be interesting. Or you could just have a 50 BMG and a couple of stingers. It's not even like a super good 50 BMG. It's just a regular 50 BMG. Still 220 though for this is maybe just a tad expensive when you've got like the M Shorad coming in at not quite 2/3 the price. And the M Shorad, about the only thing the M Shorad lacks is, okay, granted M Shorad lacks a active protection system, but it's more heavily armored. It does lose out on the second Stinger pod and subsequently 4 missiles, though. That's not too big of a deal, I don't suppose. Still, this thing is kind of expensive. And then we have the Stryker SPH with a very nice range on its artillery. And you can apparently give this thing a trophy. Why? That is largely pointless. The armor package, yeah, I can see that. Trophy? Interesting recoil mechanism, though. I'll say that. Also, the gun hasn't moved, so I wonder if they haven't quite gotten the animations for this thing in yet. Which is fine as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's no big deal for me. Although 130 for a howitzer with that range is actually really cheap. Granted, that's like, wasn't that the most expensive you could get the Brutus? I think it was. And the best otherwise that you're looking at is the A7 Paladin, which is like 160. That's 140. Excuse me, okay. No helicopters. We do get aircraft. Get a B-52. Six minutes of loiter time. Really? It's right there? Oh, okay. Bombay, you can slap on another 4 of those, or you could just slap on 45 of these if you just relish the idea of bomb. Cruise missile. Which apparently cannot be fired on them. Or, you know, you could take JASMs instead of the ALCMs, which... I mean, like, what's the difference between here? Okay, so the ALCMs are more accurate. But they don't do quite as much damage. And they don't have quite the same pen. Okay. Or JSOs. Or you can have 18 laser guided bombs. Or just 18 bog standard high explosive, or yeah. If you really just wanted to turn this thing into a giant, well, crater maker, which is exactly, I'd like to point out exactly what Grandpa Buff is supposed to do. Oh, nice rotary launcher. Guess I assume that's a rotary launcher. But you've got like the JASMs for the air-launched cruise missiles. That's kind of nice. Huh. The F-16C. Okay, that's a pretty stacked loadout. ECM, you can throw in an ECM pod under it. If you wanted to kit it out like that. Although I would honestly be inclined to do this. Do this. Middle pylon. 6 Mavericks. If you really go with 6 Mavericks. Okay. Inner pylon. Or just 2 Mavericks. $60, $40, $80, $40, so that's like what, $220? So it's $115 base. Or just 2 AMRAMs. And then the inner pylons can be used for fuel tanks if you want something approaching a air superiority capability. Even if that's not necessarily recommended. Although you would still have a relatively cheap air superiority fighter at 250. It just wouldn't have much loiter. The middle pylons. Mavericks could be fun. The inner pylons. Possibly something like that. Or you could just load it out with 12 of them. Or you could just reach for the big boys and make lots of holes. Well, I say make lots of holes. No, not make lots of holes. Make really big holes. Or do something like that, I guess. It's pretty expensive, but eh. F-16CJ, which is basically the EW variant, which already appears to have a pod, sniper pod, but can't laze. Something like that. And then replace those with drop tanks for what is effectively a constant air superiority, or something that you can cycle, but for both combination air superiority and anti-radiation, potentially. Are those the conformal fuel tanks? I mean, that would certainly be an interesting place to put them. But, okay. ECM 15 and a designation pod 470 2,000 pound for 4. Okay, sure, if you want to drop 8 500 pound laser guided bombs, do that. Or you could do the Stormbreakers, 16. Have a sort of meh air superiority fighter. Although if you're gonna do that, then you don't need this. And you might not need the ECM pod. Well, no, you still put that ECM pod on. 80, 160, 180. Do 10. Fill in the thing like 130. Base. I mean, these things are laser guided, so I suppose you could do something like that. Or this. I do something like this. Okay. So these are all interesting. Very, very interesting. And then only leaves one more to go.